Well, I will be passing this on now to Jennifer Sachs. Jen Sachs is the program supervisor of the Allegheny Lead Safe Homes program in the county's Economic Development Department. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Rebecca. So as Rebecca mentioned, I'll be moderating the next panel, which is on landlords and lead, just to give everyone some information about kind of how current lead regulations impact landlords and what their responsibilities are. So we have some great panelists from the Housing Authority to talk to everyone here about how they see their role in preventing lead poisoning, and how that they treat that with the landlords in their program. And then we'll go on to talk about sort of like the more general rules around it and get into some questions about whatever y'all want. I want to introduce our panelists. We've got Luke Lewis and Michael Falchi. They're landlord liaisons with the Allegheny County Housing Authority. And then Amanda Hauer is the senior project manager at the Housing Authority of City of Pittsburgh. And Willie Stewart is a HCV inspections managers with the city, and Sunshine Pryor is the director of compliance within the City Housing Authority. So I'll turn it over to Luke and Michael. They can start talking about at the county level at the Housing Authority, how they treat lead and with their landlords. And then we'll move on to the city. Luke and Mike, you just take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. So hi guys, I'm Luke.
I'm Mike.
Mike's here, right? Mike is going to chat. So what we're covering is we're going to go over what we look for in the inspection process. Mike will cover that. Mike is actually, I don't want to dive into his background because I'll let him share that, but he's a former inspector, so he has that experience. We were added as landlord liaisons for Allegheny County Housing Authority about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And one of the big things we've been doing to help landlords is do pre-inspections. So some of the benefits of that are finding these opportunities to address potential lead in your homes prior to the point where you'd have that real inspection with our current inspectors, where they would flag it for a lead test. And there's a big process that Mike will kind of explain to you. But this pre-inspection allows us to come out, take a look at things. And again, with Mike's experience, we can point out things that would likely be flagged for a lead test so that you can address them prior to that point in time. We have an emergency housing voucher program, EHV, where there are a lot of benefits to this program, but one of them is the Housing Quality Standards Repair Refund Program. And what that is if a landlord is willing to take in a new tenant and they have issues where it would not pass inspection, Mike and I can come and do a pre-inspection with Allegheny County, of course. The city may have their own process. Amanda might be able to touch on that, but we can come and do a pre-inspection, or it can even occur on an initial inspection. And if there's items that fail, you can use this repair refund program to pay for those items and get refunded to make it pass inspection. One of those items is a lead test. So there is funding available through us with this EHV program to have that lead test covered, as long as it would pass inspection following that. So that's a really big one for us. We often refer people when it comes to issues with lead or a lead test being flagged to the group we're working with here, Allegheny Lead Safe Homes, along with their partner Action Housing, do a lot of work with them, and they have a ton of different resources for both tenants and landlords. And obviously us as landlord liaisons, we are really trying to make the process better for landlords, for those who are renting in Allegheny County outside of the city of Pittsburgh and McKeesport. And one of those things is really doing those pre-inspections and helping folks try to avoid getting a lead test by addressing those issues head on. So we can turn it over here to Mike, who will talk a little bit more about the inspection process itself. We can go to the next slide.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike False. As Luke said, former inspector with Allegheny County Housing, and about a year or so, we accepted I accepted the position with Luke as the landlord liaison. And as he said, doing the pre-inspection has helped a lot to bring, not only let landlords know how the program works, as Luke mentioned with the incentive with the EHV program, but also to give them a heads up on an issue where painting would be cause for a failure. A lot of landlords tend to, as you other people with the city housing authority know, a lot of landlords make repairs to places, and last thing they think about is, say, a garage door or painting outside exterior. Their intention is to get everything on the inside ready to go. But landlords, some guys that or some landlords new to the program have no idea what we look for. Even current landlords are still behind with everything. I can't tell you how many landlords that I've dealt with in years have been part of the program more than I've been part of the housing authority, and they still have issues with it, painting issues. So the one thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention, I'm not sure how good we can see it, but when the inspectors go out, they receive, this would be the paperwork that they're going to be receiving. And on the bottom where it's highlighted where it says child under 6, it's either yes or 1, meaning 1 child under 6. So as an inspector, they would go out, when they drive into their property, they're seeing that there's a child under 6 at this unit. Their first point of contact when they get there is looking on the exterior. So they're going to look on the exterior of the home, look for any peeling paint, any defective paint. Again, the inspector is only doing a visual inspection. Allegheny County Housing Authority does not conduct a lead test. It's all visual. Whenever something is over 20 square feet on the exterior, the inspector would ask for a lead test. It's over 2 square feet. Anything over 2 square feet on the inside of a home is asked for a lead test. So, it's just a visual inspection as the inspector pulls up, he's looking because there's a child under 6. Let's say they have an exterior garage, as I mentioned, and the whole garage door is all full of peeling paint. We have some slides that we'll show later on as an example. That garage is detached from the home. It's part of the property. That all comes into play as part of the inspection. It could be, perfect example just there, you had it. So it could be a single family home, and about, the 40 feet away is a detached garage like this picture here. And next, the landlord's like, well, that's not part of the home. Well, it's part of the property. That all comes into play. So anything, whether it's an apartment complex, single family home, row houses, everything on that property comes into play. Even you can see in the other picture, the upper eaves, soffit fascia, you have fences, you have railings, metal railings that people painted back in the day. I don't know why. The other thing, part of the slides we tried to capture was the painted basement rafters. For some reason, a lot of people did that. And that's where you would find a neglect of a landlord remodeling the house. And last thing you look at is a basement rafter. The inspectors go into the house, everything's taken care of, and boom, they go into the basement and they look up, and all the rafters tend to be peeling paint, and they would have to flag that unit for a lead test. I'm trying to think what was the other.
So after it gets flat.
Yeah, so once it gets flagged, the inspector is going to conduct the rest of his inspection. They come back to the office, and they actually, some of them might keep a sample of a form that we have. It's in the car. I know I kept a form like this in my car when I did inspections just to save time. I'm meeting a landlord that day anyways, and I'm going to write up, hey, sorry to let you know, but I'm going to have to ask you for a lead test. So the landlord needed to complete this form. Get it to a lead-based paint risk assessor, somebody else that is qualified and licensed to come out and do the actual lead test. On the back of this second page, we have a list of about 6 companies. We have no affiliation with those companies, just companies that, we recommend to people. Landlords have contacted some of these companies. They've contacted other companies not on this list. Bottom line is, the housing authority, county housing authority, does not accept any swab test kit considered from like Lowe's, Home Depot, any of your mom and pop store. Even HUD does not allow that. That does not give you a true test. It just gives you a surface wipe, and for all we know, they might be wiping the surface in their own home. It's freshly painted. Nobody knows. So we ask that you get a certified risk assessor, somebody does their license, they do the testing, goes to a lab, send a lab report back to the inspector where it's negative or it passed. And then from there on, if it comes back, and let's say there is no lead there. If that's the case, then lead, the landlord's going to have to repaint the surface anyways. If it is lead, they got to go by what the risk assessor tells them to do. We don't give any advice and tell a landlord how to treat the property. We're not going to say, well, you need to do this, you need to add mulch and do that. We don't say any of that. That's up to the licensed risk assessor to tell the landlord what to do. I'm trying to think, let's see. Once they send that form in, like I said, you'll get lab results. It'll say pass or fail. If it does pass, then we have that form. The landlord has to conduct the rest of his repairs that's needed. And then he'll let the inspector know, hey, I got the pass lead test. My repairs are all complete. And the inspector goes out and does his his re-inspection on the unit.
And at that point, the landlord could be starting to get their rent payments.
Yeah.
But this will most definitely be a failure until we get a lead test that's
Yes,
passed, right?
yes.
And then obviously after that point in time, you can receive your payments.
Yeah, we we will not pass a unit until we have something in writing from a licensed expert that says that there's no lead there, or if there was, it was renovated, it was, it was taken care of, it was repaired properly. So we will not pass a unit without any documentation that the house is free of any lead.
And this kind of shows why it's really beneficial that we're able to point these sort of things out in our pre-inspection so that folks can address it, remove any peeling paint, any old paint, and then repaint over top of it so it's not accessible.
Yeah.
And make it a safer option for folks so that they don't get flagged for this, have to endure the cost of a lead test and the lengthy process it may take. This is why those pre-inspections are pretty helpful. Do you want to have them scan through the other examples?
Yeah, if you want to go through the other pictures there, that'd be perfect. Like I said, the fences, you see the wrought iron fence, a lot of people painted those. They painted radiators back. I don't know why people do that. I'm sure, Willie, you've probably seen stuff too on your side of it, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You guys are doing something a little more different than we do. I mean, you guys are sending the letters out. I mean, we don't. We're doing pre-inspections. We just inform the landlord that they have to get a certified risk assessor out to actually assess the possible lead. Yeah. And then we have to be presented with the pass copy before we would move forward with the contract.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think there's a couple other pictures here we can kind of scroll through and then we can pass it on over to the Housing Authority for the City of Pittsburgh with Amanda and her crew.
Yeah, like I said, 20 square feet on the outside, that adds up really fast. That's a small square, and especially 2 square feet on the inside. That's about 17-inch square base, 17 by 17, and what I think 20 square feet is like 4.5 feet on your outside. So that adds up fast. You can take one whole door, basement door, and I know if I see something like that, one picture of the door, I'm writing it up, definitely. So. But thank you all for listening. We're going to pass it on over to the Housing Authority of the City of Pittsburgh now. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks, Luke and Mike. I'm going to kick it off for the City of Pittsburgh Housing Authority, and I have my colleagues, Will Stewart and Sunshine Pryor here also. So first, we're not going to go over the same thing. Our process is very similar, as Will stated earlier, with the inspections, HQS inspections, identifying lead problems. But we are going to go into some other differences. We also have the pre-inspection process at the City of Pittsburgh. The main difference between ours and the county is that for a vacant unit, we will accept a request for tenancy approval up to 90 days. That's the biggest difference. Our timeline's a little bit longer. And if it passes pre-inspection, we will certainly we will use that inspection for the contract coming up when the RAFT is submitted. We won't go out and re-inspect as long as it passes within those 90 days. And Will, do you have anything else to add about the pre-inspection process?
No, just what Mike and Luke, reiterated what they said. We basically go out there and look for that 2-foot slot, cracked or peeled paint. Like I said, we inform the landlord of that possible lead contamination. And before we move forward with our contract, just like you said, we have a 90-day window that they can get that situation corrected. But once we, but like I said, the inspection's on hold until the deficiencies or the lead-based situation is rectified before we move on to contract for payment.
Right. And I'm sure Luke and Mike mentioned this earlier. The one benefit about the pre-inspection process, especially for new landlords, is they get an idea of what to expect with the HQS inspection. Even if it fails, it's a learning experience for the landlord, and they can make the repairs, and so they know when they submit a request for tenancy approval that these are the items that the inspector will be looking for in the future. Okay, and then the other thing we wanted to briefly mention is at HECP, we have a policy in place. If we are alerted that a child under the age of 6 in one of our properties, either in public housing or HCV, but we're only talking about HCV in this context, has an elevated blood level. And so essentially in the HCV program, we will notify HUD and Allegheny County Health Department once the EBLL case is verified. We do have a third-party contractors who are certified lead-based paint risk assessors, and they will conduct an environmental investigation of the unit and potentially the surrounding units or properties in accordance with the lead safe housing rule. We'll verify the owner's clearance examination date and results, and then we have to send the HUD clearance examination results and timeline of events to HUD to let them know that we have closed it out, the case out, and repairs and remediation has been done. And then, of course, we cannot pay on a unit until the repairs are done, and the unit will remain final fail, is what we call it, under the housing quality standards inspection process. And we can't do that until we get the clearance examination results. So that's a key part of it. Sunshine or Will, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, you pretty much clarified.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And it's similar to, for HCV, what we do in the low-income public housing program as well. And our goal really is to, I guess, holistically, the whole process is to try to ensure that there are no hazards related to lead-based paint at the property well before an incident like a child under the age of 6 experiencing an elevated blood lead level. But in instances where maybe lead components at a property deteriorate and maybe are not repaired timely, and the unfortunate event of a child being affected in that way, we do try our best to find out those instances, and we receive them in a variety of ways. It may be directly from occupants that reside at the property, or we may find out from the Allegheny County Health Department directly. But we will accept any form of notification with regard to a child that may be affected, and we will immediately try to pursue the process of verifying if it is a true case. And that leads into the process that Amanda explained. And we do that across the board because we take it very seriously when it comes to children that may be affected. But the other efforts that we do to ensure the property is in a quality condition, those, if there are lead components, that they remain intact, is all part of trying to mitigate and prevent incidences like that.
I just wanted to repeat what Amanda said. That's exactly that. We get a report of whether if it's in in the housing choice voucher program or even low income, we will basically do the same thing as the city does. File a report, send somebody out there and make sure it's, taken care of properly, and then rents on hold until we get that pass information. So basically the same thing. It's a good point.
Right. Okay. If Will or anybody else has anything else to add regarding this, then I'm going to pass it to Jen Sachs, unless anybody has a comment. Okay, it's all yours, Jen.
All right, yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, I think we'll get to the related questions we have in the chat at the end, and I'll just run through really quickly kind of what the general rules are that apply to landlords that are not a part of the Housing Choice Voucher Program or not working with the housing authorities. So general responsibilities for property owners. Main one is the EPA has a real estate lead disclosure rule, and this applies to all owners of pre-78 buildings, and at the point of sale or release, they're required to disclose what they know about lead paint. So that is like 3 kind of different things. One is they need to provide tenants or prospective buyers with this pamphlet from the EPA called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. It's just a really short pamphlet. It's available online, and is pretty readable, honestly, for a federal document, but it just kind of walks you through how to protect yourself if you're living in an older home that may or may have, you know, lead-based paint hazards in it. The second part of it is if at any point in the history of the property, it was inspected for lead by a certified risk assessor, you received a report that said there's lead paint here, 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 and here. And then if you later got the lead fixed and it says, okay, on such and such a date, the lead was remediated here, here, and here, here, then you would disclose that and share those reports with the next person to rent or buy. And then the third option is if you have no idea you've never gotten a report on the property before, then you have to have this agreement as part of the lease that says this house was built before 1978. It's possible there's lead paint. You have to like make people aware that that is an option, and there's like a standard form that you can use that EPA has, or otherwise, you know, you can draw up something similar that has basically the same language. So that's all. That's the first rule that kind of applies to all landlords, regardless of if you're working with a government agency or you're just working with individuals, or also to homeowners who are selling their properties. This is the law that applies, is that you have to share this information that it's a pre-78 home and it could have lead in it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so then the next item is if you're a landlord and your company needs to do renovations in a pre-78 home, particularly if it's occupied, but technically even if it's not, it's before, you know, you want to bring in a tenant, you need to get a contractor that will work lead safely to do the work. That isn't going to necessarily apply for all repairs, but anything where you're disturbing more than 6 square feet of lead paint. So that's not a lot. If you're scraping and painting a couple baseboards or a door, that gets you that. If you're replacing a window, that's getting you into that realm of the renovation, repair, and painting program, which is this RRP certification. So if you as a landlord have a company that does all the maintenance, you would need to get your maintenance folks, at least one of them who can teach the rest of the people they're supervising lead safe methods. That's a 1-day course. And it's like all day, 8 hours. It costs a couple $100 usually, or occasionally there's opportunities for discounted classes. And then once they're certified, they know what those lead safe methods are and they can put them into practice. So for example, okay, the person I have in my photo, they're all suited up. They've got everything plasticed off. That's definitely, they're working really lead safe right there. But different things you would need to do have different levels of dust exposure that you'd be concerned about. And this will not only protect the workers who are making the repairs, but also basically make sure that once you've done the work, you haven't just created more of a lead problem in terms of creating dust than you had at the beginning. And a lot of those methods it's really not rocket science. It's like putting down plastic, wet cleaning up so you're not just sweeping dust around, and wearing protective gear, cleaning up really well at the end. That's what lead safe methods are. And so and you can prove that you know what to do by getting that certification. Once someone takes the class, you can get the EPA to get you a certificate that lasts for 5 years as well. And this is what is now required in the city of Pittsburgh for any contractor that wants a city of Pittsburgh license as well. Even though it was already required by the EPA, now the city will be checking on that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that's all to do with kind of in the normal course of business, repairing properties or getting tenants in, selling the property. Now, if in the case where you find out there's lead in the home because there's a lead poisoned child, then the health department can get involved. So basically, any elevated blood lead level that's confirmed will be reported to the health department through the state, and the health department will reach out to the tenant to offer a full environmental investigation, which is basically a risk assessment. So it's voluntary, but if the tenant agrees for that inspection, then the health department will send out one of their inspectors. They have the XRF machine. It's kind of like a gun that you point against all painted surfaces in the home, and it'll determine whether it was ever painted with lead paint. So that it goes up to like 40 layers back. So it'll tell you not only is the top layer of paint lead, but if it was, in the last 50 years, if it ever was. So they'll test like basically every single painted surface inside and outside the home to determine if it was lead. And then looking at where the lead is, they'll determine, okay, is it chipping or peeling or flaking or otherwise disturbed, or is it intact? And then if it's chipping or flaking, then that is what goes on the scope of work of what the landlord needs to take care of. They also, as part of that report, do dust wipe inspections. So they'll test the dust for the lead load in like sort of a random sample throughout the home. They usually try and test like the kid's bedroom, living room, kind of the most frequently used areas, but they'll do a sample to determine, where those lead levels are presenting in the dust. And then that should give you an idea of where the lead is coming from, and then how bad it is that it's where it's getting into the child's body. So once that they get that report, that tells the landlord, okay, here's what you need to fix. You need to like replace these windows. You need to paint this trim. You need to, you know, side this area on the exterior, whatever the case may be. And then, so you want to hire that RRP certified firm, or, you know, or yourself as an RRP certified firm to do those repairs, and then make sure to clean up at the end extremely thoroughly so you can pass that dust wipe testing. Because then once that happens, they'll send an inspector back to test the dust again, do a visual assessment that, you know, everything that was kind of on the list gets checked off, and then send the dust wipes to a lab to ensure that that those dust levels are down. They require this to be done within 30 days. You know, if it's not done within 30 days, but they see that, you know, progress is being made, or you're applying to resources, you know, then they usually will, you know, kind of just try and help you along. But that said, if, you know, no progress is made, there's like just, you know, complete lack of compliance by the landlord, they're not even responding or something, the health department can levy fines in that situation. So definitely acting quickly is in the interest of everyone. Okay, next slide. Okay, so talking about landlord resources. So we don't have $100 million like Cleveland yet, but we do have a program that I run called the Allegheny Lead Safe Homes Program. It's run out of Allegheny County Economic Development Department. And the services we offer are lead base paint testing, like, you know, the inspection that I mentioned that the health department does and these housing authorities do as well. And then provide free home repairs up to $12,000. So landlords, they need to have a family in the home that income qualifies, but beyond that, there's no restriction in terms of when to apply. And we'll do all kinds of work. It usually is a mix of permanent solutions and interim controls, as they're called. So, you know, repainting a baseboard, or, you know, door trim or something like that, but then replacing windows, or, you know, enclosing a porch ceiling that has like chipping paint, soffit, fascia, basically anywhere that risk assessment turns up lead paint, that goes on the scope of work. We hire a contractor, and the landlord's contribution again is only going to come into if the work is determined to be over $12,000. Over $12,000, we split the cost. So if there's $20,000 worth of work being done, the landlord pays $4,000, which is still a very good deal, especially, you know, if you're looking at a lawsuit, your tenant moving out, or, you know, withholding rent, like any of those issues, to get it done, you know, it makes it definitely a financial boon. Okay, next slide is just how, like, who can actually qualify for this program. So property has to be in Allegheny County. Has to be built before 1978, because after that there shouldn't be any lead paint there. And then landlords are required to give priority to low-income families with a child under age 6 for the next 3 years following the work. So if the family that is there at the start of the work stays there, that's wonderful. You know, you're not going to get in trouble because the 3-year-old has now turned 7 or something like that over that 3-year period. But that's just a way that we can ensure that these lead safe units are going to remain available for the families that would benefit the most from them. Project-based Section 8 units are not eligible, because like the housing authorities, they already are kind of on top of that. But the housing choice voucher units, so if you're renting a private home to someone with a voucher, that would be eligible as well, but not required. So most of our jobs are homeowners, and then second is just private landlords. We do serve people with housing choice vouchers, but because of all the great work that the housing authority does, a lot of times that issue is already been addressed by them, by their inspections on the front end. And then it is required that the families that live in the home meet this income criteria. So below, it's 80% of area median income, but it's fairly generous, roughly 40% of families in Allegheny County, qualify for this just right off the bat. So they have to prove their income, submit pay stubs, things like that. But from the landlord side, it's mostly an application and then an agreement to move forward. And, you show that you actually own it and have insurance. But other than that, there aren't that many requirements for the landlord. And we've got our how to apply information there, but you can find it on our website. Looks like Dana put it in this chat as well. All right. Any questions? I wanted to start off with a few that I had when I was taking notes from the Housing Authority, and then also some that we have in our chat. One is for the housing authorities, like, how do you guys teach the landlords lead safe practices, or is that kind of their responsibility in making those repairs?
We've never really taught the landlords anything, short of, like we said, we would do a pre-inspection, or even with a new landlord or a current landlord. We would try to update them on any cases that, if any rules have changed, we would try to update them to the best, but we don't hold any classes for them to teach them anything. Again, what the housing authorities do, we do a visual, so we can't tell somebody, again, how to go about to get the test done. But I know there's plenty of classes. We actually went through them in the past to do lead safe remediation. So we spent like a whole 2 days in our old office building downtown practicing. So there's classes out there for them, definitely.
And we explained a lot of things when we're actually out there doing those pre-inspections and in the field. And that's something we can look into as well, is hosting some sort of, because we do not training sessions, but
yeah,
we do sessions with our landlords to educate them on different things that our program has to offer. One of them, could be lead safe practices that we've learned and developed. It just won't necessarily be from certified official folks, because that's not us, but we can provide some of those pinpoints that Mike looks for in those inspections and that Willie looks for as well. We can provide those details and maybe do one of our sessions on lead safe practices. So
Right. I would think for the city housing authority, we're pretty similar in that respect as well.
Yep.
But we may just share information that's already readily available, like copies of pamphlets, not only the one that Jen mentioned, which obviously we're required to do, but additional pamphlets that may be available from others, like the health department or the EPA, copies of that. And we also may, if landlords have questions about how do I get trained, or if they ask about things that might lend into training or needing to know more of those technical details, we may refer them to available resources that they then may pursue on their own.
I've actually had a couple emails come through like a year or so ago, and just from dealing with asking for a lead test with some of the reports I got, I actually emailed the risk assessor, says, is it okay if I give a landlord your information? He had questions about it, and he was happy to answer the landlord's questions. And so they, like you said, share pamphlet information. Definitely, we can do that. Sometimes the landlord, hopefully they're there when the risk assessor's there to tell them what to do. And, while if there's another person there to do that work, they're there to watch and see what's going on. So that sticks in their head for the next property they buy. And hey, I'm gonna keep an eye out for this, make sure it doesn't have any peeling paint on the outside garage, so. Helps.
Yeah, no, this is good to know. And also we have some contractor training. We have a contractor training program through ours, and we should talk to about potentially expanding that to landlords. I think that would be a good idea.
Mhm.
The pre-inspection, is that requested by the landlord, or is that part of like the normal process?
It's by request or by us going out and talking to them for Allegheny County. Yeah. So we just offer that, and a lot of people take us up on it. So.
Yep. Same here with the city. We have landlords now. We have a recruitment going on right now with landlords. And so basically what we do is with the new landlords is we offer pre-inspections just to give them a heads up. We send them a digital Adobe form out. They'll fill it back out, aligning that time with the inspector. Go out there, do a pre-inspection. Like I said, I think you guys the county is 60 days. We're 90. And we just go out there and pretty much educate them, give them a heads up, you know. Usually these landlords do not have a tenant attached to the unit. So,
Yeah.
Another question we had was, what's the turnaround time for the Allegheny County Housing Authority, the emergency housing voucher? That's like the reimbursement for landlord repairs. And does the city have something similar?
So I'll let the city talk on their end. I believe they're part of the same program we are, but with us, the turnaround time unfortunately can vary. Sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes it's more of a lengthy process, really just dependent on paperwork being turned in, the proper paperwork.
Mhm.
We work with DHS on that repair refund that I think we're asking about here. And unless they have the proper paperwork of, you know, a pre-inspection or an initial inspection that failed, along with a past inspection showing that they fixed the things that were needed to be fixed in order to get that EHV tenant in there, it's going to be a little bit of a longer process until you get that. So that's kind of the holdup that we see, is people just don't submit the required paperwork and expect that money to come back sooner than it's really able to come back. But if you submit everything as you should, I think it is not a bad process, I would say.
Yep. And just to reiterate, Mike, the inspection is not the hard part. It's just the paperwork, getting the paperwork turned in, because we can't move on any contracts unless the proper paperwork is turned in. So once the paperwork's turned in, special inspections like EVHs and stuff like that, or VAShes, we get out there probably within 48 hours, get out there and get it done. But like I said, paperwork has to be proper.
I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat about basically tenants refusing inspections because of fear about being displaced. And I'd say, yes, that is a tremendous concern, and definitely something that the health department sees firsthand. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I believe what I've heard them say is, like, you know, a decent amount of tenants will refuse that risk assessment or the environmental assessment, even with a child with an elevated blood lead level, because, you know, retaining that affordable unit is, you know, or just somewhere to live in general is such a concern. And, you know, as a tenant, you're quite vulnerable. So, yeah, I mean, so that's kind of why it's set up to be voluntary, is to not jeopardize anyone's housing that, you know, that doesn't want it looked at too closely. But that said, you know, there is definitely an issue with the health department or any agency being able to identify where the lead exposure is coming from. I don't know. I don't think it's a majority, but it is a significant minority.
Thankfully, we have the ability to, at least for the housing authorities, we have the ability to find out if there are reported elevated blood levels through the system that the county health department manages. So even if we don't learn it directly from the tenants of the household, maybe they do have some reluctancy to report, when they take their child to a doctor and find that out firsthand. Given that we're involved with the property, especially if we own it, we have the ability to find out directly from the health department. If we separately don't find out directly from the landlord who owns the property, and we will take action based off of finding out. But it is helpful if the tenants, don't have that fear of, any negative impact by virtue of reporting the conditions in their home. So as a landlord or an agency that works with a landlord who has occupants in their property, we try to work with that landlord and make sure they're complying with the conditions of their contract with which includes, without even, delving into lead alone, that property must be in a appropriate condition. So even lead aside, the inspections that we do before the property is occupied for somebody on our programs, or even inspections that are done throughout the duration of a tenant residing there with that property being involved in our program, is geared towards helping to make sure the conditions of the property are in order, that they meet certain standards. And so that's one way that we can help mitigate for that, even if the tenant themselves are reluctant for reporting what they may see. But I guess a side effect could be timing. So if a tenant who is in a property day to day and notices conditions changing and they don't tell their landlord, and if it happens to be related to lead, they may be putting their child at risk. So I would recommend that tenants, try to report the conditions, get your landlord to remedy them. If you are having difficulty, you can always feel free to reach out to the housing authorities that may be involved with that program. And then separately, where you may take your child to the doctor and unfortunately something comes up in a blood result, you can still report it. But if not, at least with regard to the housing properties, those programs, we will find out from the health department if you don't report it directly. It's just that it may delay the time to get the issues rectified, which could put the child at more risk, and nobody wants that.
That's a really good point, Sunshine. Just the time is of the essence, and in these cases.
Yeah.
And Will, did you want to say something?
Yeah, yeah, we have to be very careful also because, high elevation of lead within children don't necessarily have to be in that unit. There was a situation that happened maybe about a year or so ago where they found out that there was a construction going on next door where the kid was playing outside and came in contact with lead that way, and it wasn't in the unit. So correct assessment from the health department, or like Sunshine said, websites and stuff like that. But because it's about safety with both of our agencies, safety is number one. Safety is number one.
I actually had a tenant a couple of years back when I was inspecting, they actually called me because it was an initial inspection and I wrote up for a lead test. And because she waited so long to find a unit, which I'm sure, Willie, you everybody knows of, she actually called me and asked me to forego the lead test. And I said, there's no way I'm doing that.
Right.
I said, I even told her, and I never really said anything bad to tenants. You can't. And I was just like, I can't believe you're asking me this because your child's health's at risk, basically. And you're asking me to forego a lead test just so she can get in that unit. And then 6 months later, probably file a complaint because her child has high levels of lead. So long story short is she never moved into that unit just because, unfortunately, it was a 2-page report. It wasn't even ready to move an animal into it.
Right.
Yeah, she went on to another unit, but I was really upset that she actually called me and asked me to cancel that request for the lead test. So I don't understand it.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension just between being able to find somewhere where you can use your voucher, and then also that, it's in good condition, and you guys are really on the ground floor of that for sure. Someone in the chat asked, are physicians and nurses obligated to notify government officials of a positive lead test? So basically, when a kid goes in, a lot of times they'll do a finger prick at their 9-month visit or 12-month visit. And if that is elevated, then the parents will be asked to come back. They take a venous draw from the arm. If that is elevated, then it gets logged in the statewide database for elevated blood lead levels. The health department is pulling down those reports like every day, every week, to see if there's any children being added to those lists. So yes, they are are obligated to report, but it goes into a database called NEDS. You don't like call the mayor or something like that. Yeah, and that the health department, because it's a covered agency, is all part of under HIPAA, but they can't share that information beyond that department. Another person said, oh, where do families stay during renovation with the Lead Safe Homes program? A lot of times, so normally when the renovations are being done, they cannot stay in the home. So, I mean, we work with them and we have funding to relocate them during that time. So, if someone wants to stay at their mom's house, that's certainly fine. But if they don't have any families or friends to stay with, we'll put them up with in a hotel generally. Someone said the onus shouldn't be put on tenants to choose between a roof over their head and testing their homes for lead. We need better protections for tenants. Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it makes it very difficult because especially when this is something that, the housing authorities are held to, but beyond that, in the private market, there's not a lot of, there's no preventative measure on the front end for private units. So it's just, yeah, it's difficult. Amanda, I think I saw that you wanted to speak to this.
Oh, no, I am just marking them as we answer them live. But I do agree with that. I think we all do in some respect. So thank you.
Another question about if these rules apply to Airbnb. So obviously none of the housing authority policies apply to Airbnb, but as far as the lead disclosure and the renovation, repair, and painting, that's an interesting question. For the disclosure, I don't know, because it's not exact, like it's a short-term rental. I'm not sure. I certainly do not see any of that happening. But that's a really good question. Honestly, I'm not sure what the EPA would have to say about that. In terms of the renovation, repair, and painting rules, like basically anyone, if you're a firm doing a disturbing lead paint, then you should get EPA certified. That said, if you are just a private individual doing work on your own home, you're not required to carry any certifications. But obviously you should still take care of yourself. And there are some good resources as well through the EPA for like DIYers. And also, Amanda, you had mentioned other pamphlets for landlords in terms of being more instructive on like how to work lead safely. The EPA has a pamphlet called Renovate Right. And that's actually part of the RRP is giving that to tenants and occupants. But it does a really good summary of just kind of like how to work lead safely in a home. Okay, any other questions? I think we kind of covered how long the landlord has to make repairs, for the city and then for the housing authority, and then for the health department. So I think we're done that one. And then there was one more questions about a specific case, but is again about this like sort of conflict between having a safe place to live and a place to live at all, and that tension there, and especially inviting third-party government agencies in there too, with maybe the best intentions, but that people are wary of. Any other comments from our panelists? All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. So we're running a tiny bit early. We can take a little bit of a break and come back right at 3 for the next session. We'll be giving, Michelle will be giving out our annual Herbert Needleman Award for lead safety.